She has been with the district for 23 years and has worked as an assistant principal, director, assistant superintendent, deputy superintendent, and now superintendent. She's proud of the work they've done here to create fabulous schools for all of our kids. Both of her own daughters are products of the district and successfully launched. One is an attorney and her youngest an engineer. And she's so grateful to their teachers and administrators for their large roles in shaping them as positive, contributing members of society. Jodi has published several books on educational theory, trained thousands of teachers and principals across the country, and holds a doctorate in educational leadership as of October 8th. Wow, fantastic, congratulations. She says, I could not be prouder to continue serving this district and community, even in these crazy times. So we'd love to hear about all the crazy times, and welcome, Jodi McClay.
Thank you. You don't have to clap. Thank you. You're so sweet. It is a pleasure to be here. Mr. Ritter and I have worked together for about the last 15 years, and we miss him terribly. He spoke very highly of this group, though, so I'm anxious to get to know many of you. Just out of curiosity, how many of you have children or grandchildren in our district schools? We've got some? 2? Okay, awesome. Well, like you and like Marty shared, both of my daughters went through our schools, and we just had fabulous experiences, very different experiences. They went to different schools. My youngest actually came with me when I was a principal, and she was at my school and then fed through the middle school and the high school on the northern side of town. My youngest went through the southern side of town based on her interests. So we had great experiences. It's been an amazing 23 years in the district. I never set out to be superintendent. That wasn't necessarily my career goal, but I love our district. I love our teachers. I love our principals. And so when I was asked to serve in this capacity, I said, well, all right, here we go. We'll keep doing the work we've been doing. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. So in just a second, I'll have you tell me if you can see my screen. I've got a few slides for us today. Let's see.
Yes.
You should be seeing it about now. Are we good?
Yes.
Awesome. Yes. Okay. Well, since many of you have children and grandchildren in the district, I'll go kind of quickly, but I can still see you over on the right-hand side of my screen. So if you want me to pick up speed, give me a sign. If you want me to slow down, I can do that too. I could talk about our district for days on end. And how interesting, I noticed there's a typo on the first slide. How embarrassing. I am the superintendent with a U in there, but we'll pretend like we didn't see that, and I'm going to flash forward real fast there. So some of the things I thought I would talk about this morning, and again, you can take me down a different path if you'd like. I've been in so many roles and so many schools in our district, I can talk about just about anything you'd like. But I figured we'd talk real quickly about some general information about the district, basically how our world changed on a dime in March. Many of us have those dates committed to memory. We talk about it before March 13th and after March 13th, because that's when we were closed down like all schools in the state of California. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk a little bit about the governor's orders right now and how those changed over the summer. So kind of what we're operating right now, and then what we hope to operate in the near future. We have been allowed to bring back some small groups of students, so we figured we would inform you about that in case you're asked in the community. Well, wait a minute, I heard that little Johnny down my street is getting to go to school a few days a week. What's that all about? So I'll walk you through what that means. Our food service program, because we are still feeding many, many children throughout the community, and we're proud of that. We want to be feeding even more. And then we'll finish up with just kind of what our next steps are and where we hope to be in the very near future. So does that sound okay?
Yes.
All right. Here we go then. General information. Our enrollment right now is sitting, I like to say just under 30,000. It's a little bit of an exaggeration. I suppose I should be saying just over 27,000, but we're 27,222 as of yesterday. And we've been hovering about that number for the last probably 4 years, we are in what's called a slightly declining enrollment district. And what that means is that for the first probably 15 years that I was in this district, we were growing. And as Temecula was growing, we were building school after school. In fact, in one particular year, we built 3 elementary schools at once. So that tells you how quickly we were growing. But what happens as a community gets older is the price of housing goes up. And so you no longer are what we call a first-time buyer community, where people come in with very young children at the elementary age. But now we're more of kind of a second home type of community, or even third home community. And so people tend to move in with older children or no children at all. And so what we're seeing for the last 4 years is we bring in fewer kindergartners, our youngest students, than we graduate seniors. And so that number is going down anywhere from about 75 to 100 children a year. Amazingly, and I feel like I have to knock on wood, we have not lost a lot of children during COVID and the fact that we had to go to a distance learning program. And there were a lot of thoughts that we would, parents who would say, wait a minute, I don't want this for my child. But the fact that all schools in the state, public schools, are now operating in this manner, it doesn't give a lot of choice. And we believe in Temecula that our program is, even though it's not perfect, the virtual learning program, it's stronger than many districts. And so we're proud that we've retained most of our students. 27 schools, almost 3,000 employees. We are the second largest employer in Temecula, second only to Pechanga. So we are proud of that. Our ranking in the county is numero uno, and it has been for many, many years. We are quite proud of that. Our students perform beautifully on their state and national tests. We have students every year getting into the Ivy Leagues. We have students doing career pathways and finishing high school with career tech certifications, if that's what they want. And so we're really proud of the diverse programs that we offer. All of our high schools are also highly ranked throughout the world, really. But in US News World and Report is some of the most prestigious rankings, and our schools always come in very, very high. So with that said, again, we believe we have great teachers, great principals, great parents, great students, a great community, and we have all of those ingredients. It really ends up with an amazing product, which we like to say is our graduating students. So that all had the potential to change very, very quickly in March, when we got the news early March that there was this virus out there, and it had different names in the beginning, but everybody pretty much thought, well, this is going to be maybe a 2-week thing. And we all, most superintendents throughout the county and throughout the state, said there's no way they'll close schools. We just can't do it. Our economy can't function. None of us had ever seen it in our 30-year careers. But lo and behold, within the course of about 1 week, from a Monday to a Friday, we realized we think they're going to shut us down. And what's that going to look like? And so our shutdown occurred on March 13th. And amazingly enough, that was only a week away from our natural spring break. And so we left on March 13th thinking, we'll be back in 3 weeks. We're going to have 1 week working from home, then we're going to have 2 weeks spring break, and then it'll be time to come back. Little did we know 7 months later, we would still be in this format, having gone through many, many changes. So this was our original reopening plan when we thought that we would get to reopen soon. We went through all of these steps, and as you'll see throughout this presentation, things have changed almost on an hourly basis. That's been the craziest part about all of it, is just when we thought we would be able to reopen, at least on a part-time basis, then that changed and we couldn't. And so it really has been a moving target, to say the least. What has remained static or a constant throughout that have been our values. And you can see those here, that when we did reopen, we would follow public health guidelines. And I think that's really important, because a lot of folks, things are really political right now. And a lot of folks say, well, open the schools, you know, no matter what. We aren't the public health experts. We aren't medical practitioners. We can only take the advice. And so we've remained firm all along that our mission is to educate children, but we can't do that if they're not in a safe environment. And so we would follow public health's guidelines. Obviously, maintaining a care, diverse, and supportive environment, whether it be online or in person. Moving all student learning forward has continued to be a goal, because a lot of districts throughout the country are seeing what they call a widening of the achievement gaps. In layman's terms, we look at that as kind of the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. Because if you come from a family of means, you can hire tutors. You might have a parent who's a stay-home parent who can be more supportive and help their child and serve as a tutor or a quasi-teacher. Whereas in your less income homes, those children don't have those same supports. And so you see that gap widening. Protocols, we wanted to be sure were in place. Also, our priorities throughout all of this, instruction has remained a #1 priority for us. And I think that's important to remind the community, because that's our mission. That's why we exist. I kind of equate it to, you know, if somebody walked into Starbucks and asked for a prime rib dinner, you know, that's not what they do. If someone walked into Starbucks and asked to purchase clothing, you know, that's not their mission. And a lot of people turn to the schools thinking, we need to solve the societal ills, or we need to go against the state orders. We need to ignore public health. We need to kind of make up our own public health rules. That's not our mission. Our mission is to educate children. And so we are staying true to that mission, and we are investing our energy in how we do that in a different model. So obviously, while we keep them healthy and well, it required a huge, very fast investment in technology to the tune of almost 10,000 devices had to be ordered very, very quickly, because if we want children to learn from home, we've got to provide the necessary equipment. So facilities were a huge piece. We have 27 schools, but even more facilities, if you think about it from that perspective. And so keeping our employees safe and our students safe was huge. And then communication has been huge. Sadly, I've kind of had to turn to making videos for our parents and our staff, and it's not something I like doing. I don't think any of us like to see ourselves on camera or making a recording, but the need for information, you know, we've all been just craving, when can we reopen? What are the criteria? What will it look like? We need to know that for our children. We need to know that for our jobs. So communication has been a huge piece for us throughout. Like I mentioned, the guidelines continue to change. I don't know who or which of you are watching the news this morning, but I think now they're saying, you know, it may be extended from 6 feet, the social distancing requirements. And so those have implications in classrooms, because it's very, very difficult to keep children, let alone adults. We see that at the grocery store, but to keep people 6 feet and now more apart from each other. So face coverings, masks, will they be required? Will they not be required? Will we be taking temperatures? Will we not be taking temperatures? What happens if a child or a staff member has a temperature? So all these kinds of things have been moving targets. The same thing with the watch list. You all know our county is still on the watch list within the state, but even that system has changed, and it's now a color-coded system. So we're all crossing our fingers that we get out of purple and into red, because that has new or less restrictions, I should say. So in March, April, and May, as it kind of continued to drag on, we started to shift our focus to the fall in terms of how will we be ready for the fall. And so what we wanted to do originally was offer 3 models for parents. We spent a lot of time getting 3 models ready. And these are important because we really are still here, no matter when we come back, whether that's next week or next year. Whenever we are allowed to come back, we hope to offer 3 models for people. What I'm calling a brick and mortar model, where students would come back to school in a full-time traditional manner. We'd like to offer some kind of a hybrid model where students could learn from home part of the time if they like that and if that works for their family, and come to school part of the time. And then we also will have perhaps some immunocompromised students or just students who are really liking the online approach. And that's what's been really fascinating to see, is that some parents and students thought it would be awful and, oh my goodness, this is going to be terrible, we can't do this. And they're actually coming back and saying, you know what, this isn't so bad. We're kind of getting in the groove and getting the hang of things. My child really likes it. Other people, it's been the complete opposite. Their child was doing really well in school, but now all of a sudden in front of a device, it's not going so well. So our hope is to really, when we can, offer as many options for kids and their parents as we possibly can. So as you know, the governor's orders came down in July that if we were on the monitoring list, we basically could not open. And that is an executive order in our state. And so again, regardless of people's political thoughts or what they think about the virus, the school district has no option at this point. We are not allowed to open. We're still in the purple. That system changed a few weeks ago, so now it's a color system. There is talk, and I'll show you at the end of this today, we're definitely moving in the right direction, and the metrics that are used to determine what color we're in look good for us right now. It looks like within the near future, and when I say near, people say, what does that mean? We were told by County Public Health yesterday that it could be as early as 2 weeks and as late as 2 months that we get out of purple and into red. So, you know, that gives us a little bit of hope, because once we get into red, we only need to be there a certain number of days before we can start opening. So all of our energy has shifted to being ready for that. A lot of committee work has happened throughout the district. When it first came down in March, we opened what we called think tanks, and we brought parents and teachers and community members together to start designing what will this look like, this online program. Now we're at a point where we have health teams of nurses and social workers. We're seeing a lot of social emotional needs, not only for our kids, but also our parents. Some of them are just about going stir crazy with trying to work from home, trying to manage a family, trying to educate their children at the same time. It's really, really hard. So we've developed a lot of social emotional resources. We also have curriculum teams. We had to take all of our curriculum in Temecula, and that's for every single subject that we offer at every single grade level. And we had to transition it from a face-to-face model, including the assessments and the pacing guides, the planning calendars, all of our lessons, because we have in our district a very consistent curriculum. It doesn't matter what teacher you have in 4th grade or what school you go to. Doesn't matter what teacher you have for AP biology at all of our high schools. It is the same curriculum, the same assessments, the same standards. So we had to transition all of that to an online platform and then train our teachers. So we've had a huge team of people working to get our teachers comfortable with delivering instruction in this manner. And that's been very difficult. It's been quite an adjustment for them as well. So what it looks like now, and it has since we came back to school in August, we have what's called online learning, and we use different learning management systems if you're familiar with any of those. Canvas is kind of like a Blackboard. It's a program that our secondary schools are using, again, for consistency, because that's always been really important to us in Temecula. We don't want a child's success to be dependent on which teacher they were lucky enough to get assigned to for that course or that grade level. We really want to have a consistent and viable curriculum. So all of that has been loaded into an online system. At the elementary level, we use a program called Seesaw, and it's very similar if you are familiar with Facebook, strangely. It's very similar. It's almost like each class has kind of a Facebook page, and that's how they work and they communicate. And it's actually very highly regarded by our parents, our teachers, and our students. And then the three big things are that second bullet under online instruction. Those are kind of the words of the year, if you may, is asynchronous, synchronous, and independent work. And so I think it's really important to point out that we don't want our children sitting in front of a device for 6 hours a day. And that's a huge piece of this, is that we want them doing 3 things throughout every day. So asynchronous means they are working on a computer, they're watching videos that their teachers have made, and they're going through online lessons. Synchronous means just like what we're doing right now, but that they are working with their teacher live. And then we have teachers breaking them into groups, and so they can actually talk and engage and participate. It's not just the teacher like me right now dumping a bunch of information on their students and expecting them to listen to it all. So the synchronous part is the engaged part. And then the independent work, hopefully they're reading books and they're writing and they're taking walks and exploring and looking for connections in the community, and they're playing and they're being kids too. While we know it looks different because they're wearing masks and they're having to social distance, we don't want them just sitting in front of a device. So that's been really, really important. And that's been hard for people also. And this is just a slide that describes each of those a little bit more thoroughly. Again, I like to say that synchronous and asynchronous are kind of the words of the year for educators in 2020. Most educators didn't know what those terms meant, but now they're using them every day and all day long. This is just a draft schedule for what it looks like right now. This would be a high school schedule. You can see that on Mondays, our kids have more of an asynchronous and independent learning day. They spend less time with their teachers on Mondays, and that's because the teachers are required by contract to have prep time and to have collaboration time. And what we've found is the planning to be able to deliver their lessons in an online format is taking an inordinate amount of time, uploading, making videos, and all of that kind of stuff. So it's a lot more independent on Mondays, and then Tuesday through Friday, they're working more with their teachers. At the middle school and the high school level, you'll see here, it's the same. They only go to 3 periods a day, and they're longer periods. And that was designed intentionally during COVID to try and help them from having just so much. So it also helps teachers. Teachers are only working with 3 groups of students a day versus 6. And then our elementary is similar in the sense that Monday is a little less teacher driven, although Monday's also when they typically get their visual and performing arts class, their PE class, their library class. All of those specialists work with kids on Mondays, as well as some during the rest of the week. But you'll see in here, there's a lot of small group, and that's intentional. So the teacher may only be working with 4 or 5 kids at a time, while the rest of the kids are doing something in their homes. That's to get them off the computer for that time period. And it's also to give the teacher the opportunity to work in those small groups, because with 25 or 35 kids in a class at once, they could very easily kind of sit back, tune out, maybe not participate. So there's a lot of small group. Here's a picture of kind of what it looks like when you have that many kids. In this case, these are teachers, and these teachers were doing some professional development the week before school. We rolled out 8,000 iPads at our elementary campuses, and that meant that our teachers had to get very, very quickly trained. And so we brought them together for an iPad camp for a week, where they actually were the students and learned how to use them. So that's been interesting. And I can't fib and say that technology has been seamless. Technology has been one of the more difficult components of rolling this out, because just this morning, for example, I couldn't log in to Google. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the internet, but I tried and I tried. I did the same thing I do every day, but it wouldn't work. And so we have a lot of those issues every day. If you think about the fact that so many adults are working from home now, and so everybody on your street is using the internet all day long, and they're doing things that require a lot more bandwidth. They're doing live videos, they're doing Zooming like we're doing right now. So that's been problematic. We have kids getting kicked off. They might be in the middle of a test or a really important lesson and then their system crashes. So that's been a frustration for parents and a frustration for students and teachers. They will tell us it's getting better, definitely getting better, but it's been difficult. So, and then I mentioned this earlier, just the amount of professional development that we've had to do for training our staff. And we will do more of it even when they get ready to come back, because that's an important message today. Well, even when we come back, school will look very differently. There are new rules and restrictions, and while those could change, the current ones are that students have to stay 6 feet apart. They can't interact with students from other classes. So if you think about like an elementary school where they all go to recess together and they all go to lunch together and they might go to library with another class, none of that can happen. We can't even let a student leave their classroom to go to the bathroom because another student from another class may be going to the bathroom and they can't cross collaborate. And so even that has to be choreographed because obviously children have to be able to use the restroom. So all of that, walking paths and where students are dropped off and where they're picked up, that all has to be changed. The same thing with at the middle school and the high school level. It's the same way when we went to school, a bell rings and all the doors open and the students go, and then they all transition to their next classes. Well, even that has to be revised. So cleaning schedules are far more stringent. How we serve lunch is far more stringent. So just lots of changes, and that all requires training of teachers. And that has nothing to do with instruction, but it requires training of teachers. So then about 3 weeks ago now, we got new guidance from the state, which said, actually it said two things. And one thing I didn't put in this presentation, but it said that we could allow students back for what's called athletic conditioning. And now that's not like an athletic practice. They're not supposed to be practicing the sport, but they can be conditioning. And, a good coach can really define that pretty widely to be able to really work those kids. But that was a huge shock to most districts and to community members, because we thought, wait a minute, we can't bring them back for school, but we can bring them back for athletic conditioning. And so that's been difficult for folks. It's also been difficult, like for our visual and performing arts students, drama, band, show choir, even ASB, our leadership teams. They are now saying, well, wait a minute, if the baseball team can run laps every day, why can't we come out and practice with our instruments? And I will be brutally honest, it breaks my heart to tell them no, but that is a state mandate right now, that we're not allowed to let anyone other than athletic conditioning. And again, I think it sends a mixed message, but it's not up to us. We're given the laws and then we have to bring them to fruition. So that's been an interesting fact. The last 2 weeks since Labor Day, our athletes have been able to come out and work with their coaches to condition. We also received permission to do what are called cohorts, or small groups of students. Now the requirements are incredibly stringent. So the planning to even bring a group of 14 students onto a campus has just been incredibly intense, because those 14 students can only come into contact with 2 adults, the same 2, from the moment they arrive on campus to the moment they leave. And so that means those 2 people are responsible for their health needs, their academic needs, their supervision needs, their lunch needs, all of it. And so it also is limited to certain groups. And so you'll see here, like English learners, our children who are learning English as a second language, our students at higher risk. So we are working on our special education students to be able to bring them back in cohorts, our foster youth, our homeless youth, or our students experiencing abuse or neglect. we are able to bring them into a group of no more than 14 with 2 adults. And a lot of people got really excited about this when it started, because we thought, great, that's a small group, and we all want like the smallest class sizes we can get. But here's what it looks like. It doesn't look that exciting if you think about it. You see students are 6 feet apart, no more than 14 in the room. They have to wear their masks, and they're not getting instruction from a teacher. We don't have teachers with them. We're not allowed to. Their teachers are giving them instruction still on the devices. That's why you see computers in front of them. And the adults in the room, the 2 adults, are campus supervisors. So they're really there just to make sure that they're safe and that their basic needs are met. But they're not tutors, and they're not giving any instruction. So this we started 2 weeks ago, and we have 55 English learners. And part of the reason we chose these students first was these 55 students were living in locations where they had 0 internet connectivity. And it wasn't because they just didn't have it in their homes. It was because no provider, meaning like an AT&T or Verizon, can get them service. So they truly were living in areas where there was no way they could access the instruction from their teachers. And so they've been coming to school now for 2 weeks and learning in these environments. We also just last week started special education cohorts. And these are our special needs children. We started with just 6 classes last week. Today is day 4. It's going really, really well. But we have 3 classes at one elementary school and 3 classes at another elementary school. Next week, we open up at 2 more schools. The week after that, 2 more schools. The week after that, 2 more schools, et cetera, et cetera. So eventually, all of our special needs children will have been invited back to a cohort to come to school. So this has been exciting. Now, these students are working with teachers. They're not just at school being supervised, but we aren't able to provide transportation. So, but we are able to provide a lot of their special services. So like if they get occupational therapy, adaptive PE, speech and language, we're able to bring those specialists in. But this is just a 2-hour a day, 4 days a week model. So we're excited about that. And it just warms your heart when you get to see kids are so excited to come back to school. It's just, I think every adult who is on a campus, when we bring kids back in a small group, we just stand there crying because our kids have really missed school. And so are our teachers, and obviously so are our parents. Everybody's ready for kids to go back to school, but it's just super neat to get to see them in their classrooms. I talked with 3 high schoolers last week who went to a high school. Now they had to drive very, very far because they couldn't get into a California school to take the ACT on a Saturday. These are seniors that I'll just share with you, drove out of state to take the ACT. Their mom loaded them up, and that's the only place they could get the test. But their biggest takeaway when they walked out of that high school was how neat it was to be back in a school. Even though it wasn't their school and they were just there to take a test, they evidently talked about it the whole way home, how neat it was to be back in school. So we're really excited to be able to bring more kiddos back. We never dreamed it would be 7 months. And then the last thing I wanted to share, we are providing meals, and it's not just lunch. We're calling it a lunch program, but they are bags that have breakfast and lunch for multiple days. Now, there's a little change to this advertisement. Last week, we advertised free for any child, and it was astounding. We had people driving from as far as Hemet and San Jacinto. Word traveled that we were providing food, which breaks my heart because it tells me that that's how many people we have out there who are hungry, and parents who need food for their children, because we ran out of food and we ran out really early in the process. And so a lot of our Temecula kiddos didn't get food last week. When I say last week, it's a Monday program, so they pick up their meals for the week on Monday. And so last Monday, a week ago yesterday, we had a lot of kiddos who didn't get it because we ran out, and we served thousands and thousands and thousands of meals. Yesterday, I got an email last night that it went way better and we were able to serve our families, but we had to cut it off only to Temecula children. And so we are encouraging, I'm working with the other superintendents from other districts and cities to do a similar program, because if all districts did it, and they can, because we're reimbursed to a large degree from the federal government for this. So it's a lot of work, but it's not something that's encroaching hugely on our budget. Now, I don't believe it pays for itself entirely, but it's close enough, and we believe it's the right thing to do. The last thing we want is our kids going hungry. And so we opened it up to Temecula children this week, but all children. They didn't even have to be students in our schools. If they live in Temecula, we gave them a package and they went home with their food for the week. So we're excited about that program. We're hopeful that more districts will do it, because as we saw last Monday, we've got kids out there who evidently aren't getting food, and that's just not okay. So the two things I promised I would share with you earlier, I referenced that we are still in the purple in Riverside County, but there are two metrics that are used. One is the positivity rate. And we had good news, not only last week, but now this is a week old. So for the last 2 weeks, if the number comes in under 8%, and it did, then we can get promoted to red if we also have the second metrics, and that is the daily case rate. Now, this is interesting because 2 weeks ago, our daily case rate was under the limit and we would have made it. But the state has changed how they are compiling Riverside County's daily case rate, and they bumped us up to 8.6 because the claim is that we don't have enough people testing in Riverside County based on our populace. And so the big message from the county right now to Riverside County residents is, if you're going to get tested, they want them to be tested at a state or county facility, because those are the only tests that are being counted in the daily case rate calculation. If you go and get the test from your doctor's office or certain clinics, and the way they've described it to me is, if it's the antigen test or a rapid result test, those aren't counted. And so they're really encouraging Riverside County residents who want to see things open up faster to actually get the test at a state or a county facility, because those are what are being counted. So as soon as this number gets below 8%, then our county will move into what's called the red zone, out of purple. And then if we stay in the red zone for a certain number of days, I believe right now it's 14 days, although I did hear talk yesterday that it may be changed to 21. But if we stay in the red for 14 days, then schools would be allowed to open, but it's really important to recognize that doesn't mean we open with what it looked like in March, because there are certain rules that we have to follow or adhere to that we can't do with school looking like it did in March. So once we're able to come back, we have to show that all of our students will be socially distanced, which you can't do in a classroom of 30 or 35 kiddos. So what that means probably is that we will split our classes in half, and it will kind of be like a hybrid model where students will come to school part-time and they'll learn from home part-time. And that will be a transition model where we test it out to make sure that we don't have an outbreak, that people don't get sick, and that we can adhere to all of the rules. And we will have to do that until the state says we no longer have to socially distance. We'll have to just have part of our students back on a campus at a time. And as rough as that sounded back in March, people went, oh no, that's horrible. We need our children in school full time. We're actually hearing even parents are saying, I'll take it. If I can get 2 days a week where they go to school, or maybe it's 4 mornings a week where they go to school, we'll take it. That's great. And some of our kids are even saying, I can learn from home part-time. I like that model. So we're looking forward to getting to what we're calling that hybrid model as soon as we are allowed to, and that will be a certain number of days after we get into red. Okay. I threw a lot of information at you, but I wanted to leave a little bit of time if you have questions or comments. Like I said, I've worked for the district a really long time, and I've worked in every role. So anything you want to know, I can probably help. And if not, I can get you in touch with the right person.
Thank you so much. So it's open. If you guys have any questions, do you have any questions?
I do.
Oh, go ahead, Marty.
Okay, well, my question is regarding the pickup of the breakfast and lunch, the grab and go. And so now when the Hammett family goes in, what do you tell them? I mean, how do you look at the driver's license to see if they're qualified, and then, oh no, you're from Hammett, you can't, so they have to leave? And what happens?
Well, that's a tough question to answer, because on the record, we're supposed to say that they have to be Temecula children. But it's my understanding, and it's been our goal, not to turn anybody away who's there. And so I want to believe, and I believe our staff has been trained, that if somebody comes, we're going to feed them. We don't want to turn people away. But what we saw last week was heartbreaking in the sense that we ran out of food. And then we were turning people away. And so the way we've tried to handle it is by advertising. And so this week it was advertised that you needed to be a Temecula resident and bring your ID. Now, among us, and I'm nervous because I see that little red light flashing that we're recording, so please don't quote me in the paper here, but it's my understanding that if someone else came and they had children and needed food, we gave them food.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My question is really just about your daughter. She went to the different school, the younger one for the engineering, right? Which school is that?
Oh, that's funny. So my youngest daughter, Emily, is a biomedical engineer. She actually just graduated from Vanderbilt in May and was picked up by Abbott Labs. Whoa. And she's leading a team in Chicago of 150 people. I don't know if you've seen on the news, but the new Abbott product is a COVID-19 5-minute test that hooks to an app on your phone. So once you get a clearance, you now have a QR code that you can go anywhere and say, I'm clear for 7 days. I was negative. And just graduating from college in May, she was on the team all summer that designed that app with Abbott. It's just amazing. She went high school, Great Oak, the IB program. Her middle school was Day Middle School. And I really, I credit a lot of her math and science teachers all the way up in our district. Her elementary school was Nicholas Valley because I was the principal there. So
yeah, the Great Oak, that's where my daughter's going. They have an engineering curriculum, a gal teaching engineering there. So I guess that's
Mrs. Drawn. Tammy,
what's her name?
I believe it's Mrs. Drawn, Tammy. She was our district teacher of the year last year. And my Emily, when I gave Tammy the award last year, I was presenting it to her and I hugged her and I said, I so wish that Emily could have had you. Tammy wasn't teaching engineering then. And so Emily didn't have her. She would have loved her. So yeah, great teacher.
It's a good thing to have. Put that in all the schools. I guess that's you can do that. Put engineering at every school, like
yes.
There.
And we do have, we've got some phenomenal middle school engineering teachers too. Kelly Maxey over at Vale Ranch Middle School. My daughter did have her in elementary school for a little while. Amazing program. Another one at Gardner Middle School, amazing program. So we're really trying to expand. We also have a partnership with Abbott. You know, they have the plant still in Temecula, and my daughter actually started a summer internship with them in high school, and it went all the way through college and is now a job. So
yeah, it's great.
Anyone else have any questions?
I have a question. It's every parent's daily nightmare that drop off, have you thought about how you're going to do that with the temperature checks? Are you going to have more teachers or faculty volunteers out there taking temperatures as they get out of the car, before they get out of the car?
You know, and it's interesting because that's one advantage to the hybrid model with only half the students coming back, is that only half of them will arrive and dismiss at a time. And I agree with you. That's every principal's worst nightmare of the day. We used to say, you know, 8:40 to 8:55 and 3:20 to 3:35. As a principal, you earn your salary in those 30 minutes because the traffic is just awful. Another thing we'll be doing is kids will be dropped off in different areas, and that's because they can't cross collaborate. So, you know, and a lot of cross collaboration happens at drop off and pickup. So you'll have a very specific place on the campus where you will drop your child off and they will go straight to their classroom with their group and then come straight back out to that location. As far as temperature checks right now, we're still a little on the fence about that. Most public districts are finding that for the children, they're not going to take the temperatures every day, because here's the thinking. If the child has already come to school and they've already gotten to the classroom, they've seen other children. And so what they're looking at is having parents actually do the temperature check. And there are some apps where it'll go right to the teacher's iPad when students walk in. If you take your child's temperature, there'll be like a little questionnaire. You'll answer 3 questions in the morning. My child has no symptoms. My child has no fever. You know, no one else in the house is sick, say. And then it goes right to the teacher's iPad. And so the students will come in, they've got a green check next to their name. If the parent forgets to do that, or didn't do it, or answered no to something, or the wrong question, the student would be directed to a different location where there would probably be a health clerk who would do a screening. So that still kind of changes though every week. That's the talk right now.
Okay.
I have another question. I have a daughter who is a 6th grade math teacher in New Mexico. And right now they're online, but shortly they'll go hybrid. And so they're getting teachers, they say, okay, teachers have got to monitor the hall, plus go back in the classroom and wipe down the tables. And how can they be 2 places at once? And it's really sometimes what is demanded of them is overwhelming.
And that is so true. And that goes back to I think it's Mr. Grimm's question about temperature checks. You know, teachers are saying, well, wait a minute. I mean, I'm willing to go above and beyond. I'm willing to roll up my sleeves because that's just what teachers do. But there's only so much we can ask, you know, of a human being. And we're concerned about that as well. We've actually changed at the elementary level. And this is sad. And that's why I keep reiterating to people that school won't look the same for a while. Like when children get to school, they're not going to get to go out and play because again, they could cross collaborate. I say cross collaborate because I think it's a nicer term than cross contaminate, but that's the gist of it. And so they will go right to their classrooms, which means teachers won't be doing any duty outside. They will be in their classrooms and just kind of slowly welcoming children, kind of like we do on rainy days, so that the child only comes into contact with that adult. But the choreography of all that is pretty intense. And a lot of it comes down to what can we ask of our teachers? You know, they went to school to teach. They didn't go to school to do all this other stuff. And it's not that they're not willing. They're willing, but it all comes at a price. You know, they could be reading with children or talking with children and greeting them versus doing this duty or that duty. And so we're just trying to really clearly define who does what. And that's also important because gosh forbid someone were to become ill or test positive, then you have to contract trace. And right now our county public health is not doing the contract tracing like we thought they were. They're wanting us to do it. And so we have to have records of who's come into contact with everybody. And that's the part that breaks my heart because I know in order to do that, school's not going to look like that colorful, welcoming, fun, vivacious environment. And the last thing I want are schools to look like we're training robots or even worse, prison-like.
Well, I have a friend who retired in Murrieta at the end of last year. And I'm just wondering, have you lost any to speak of because of COVID?
Do you mean people retiring early or?
Yes.
Yes, we have. In fact, typically we have a window in the spring every year, and I think it was in March, of people who sign up to retire, because there are some benefits if they sign up early, some additional benefits they can get. And so typically we hear from 100% of those who are going to retire within that window, because it would be silly to miss the window and then not get those benefits. We opened up a second round, I think in May, to say, you know, now given what we know about COVID, if you would like to retire, and we had a whole bunch of people join then. We opened up a third round in July, and we had more people join. And I believe I was asked just last week, would we consider even a mid-year? And I think that speaks to just how hard this is on everybody. You know, we had people who wanted to keep working who are saying, I can't do this. It's just, it's hard. And I think you see it societally. Fuses are short, folks are frustrated, you know, and none of us really know what everybody else is dealing with. And it doesn't take much to send somebody over the edge. And so teachers, principals, district office people, we get a lot of really mean or nasty emails and phone calls from people. And you think, oh my gosh, you know, we didn't create this pandemic. We're trying to react to it. We didn't create it, but folks are just, they're at their limit. And so I think that wears on teachers. Teachers are thinking, I don't want to teach this way. I can't build relationships. I mean, imagine kindergarten, you know, in a virtual format. I taught kindergarten for years. And when I pop into these Zoom lessons in kindergarten classrooms, our teachers are working so hard and our kids are adorable and it's all they know. They love it. They're doing okay. But it breaks my heart because I know it's not what it could be in a classroom. And I think that's why some of our teachers are saying, I can't do this anymore, because they know what it could be.
And so have you gotten replacements?
Yeah. Temecula, fortunately, we are still an amazing draw, you know, as the #1 county or the #1 district in the county and one of the top in the state. People want to work for us. And so we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applicants for every position still. So that's just our reputation. So that's good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Jodi. Please let us know as a club how we are able to help you, if we're able to distribute the food in any way. We are here to help you and to help our community as well.
Thank you so much. Bless you all. You are part of what makes Temecula so great, and you are why we do what we do. So thank you.